This is Zach here, Genzio Media. Super excited to be at the Stable Summit with Sam from a16z. Today we're going to be talking about what made them want to come to this event, how it's been going, and their perspective on stablecoins. So as we kind of kick things off, what made you guys want to come to the Stable Summit here in SF?
Well, look, I'm living in SF and I love talking about stablecoins. So, and I should say I love the Dynamic team and always happy to talk stables. Just trying to boost awareness, especially reach across the aisle, help people in fintech see the opportunity, and yeah.
Amazing. And sort of for those who don't know maybe as much about a16z, which is hard to imagine, I think, but what is kind of your guys' involvement in the stablecoin space, and how do you see that as sort of within the overall landscape of crypto?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on the a16z crypto team. We make crypto investments of all kinds. We look at all sorts of deals, whether that's super on-chain native things, so layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains, or infrastructure like wallets, or privacy tools and apps that are built in. We look at all that stuff. We're also part of a larger fund which does investments in enterprise software and fintech and all these things. So in terms of how we look at stablecoins are one of the tools that we think are most likely to onboard the next generation of people into crypto rails. So we're seeing that already. Like about twice as much volume moved over stablecoins as went over Visa last year. Pretty unbelievable statistic.
Crazy.
And that means that more people are going to have wallets, more people are going to be sending money this way. And then eventually they might be using more of the tools that are crypto native. So DeFi, lending, once they start to use stablecoins for payments.
Kind of from your perspective, because you probably, get pitched on many different stablecoin projects, protocols, and so on. What kind of makes, the groups that you see here different, and maybe what projects are you most excited about in the stablecoin space? I know you mentioned Dynamic as one, but, I guess like why would you even have mentioned that one? What makes them to you?
Well, we invested in them.
Okay,
we love
awesome.
Yeah. They're making it a lot easier for fintechs, but also Web3 companies to get started with a wallet and then begin to use things like stablecoins to make their app or experience better. Look, we look for basically the same things we look for in all of our investments, which is a great founder, a great business model, and an opportunity where they can really, they can change a market, they can influence a lot of people's lives, they can build a great business. No different in stablecoins, except for the fact that this is a really generational step change in how payments are done. So until recently, when you did a payment, like an international payment, there was way more people than you'd expect who are like reading a piece of paper to move the money along from correspondent bank to correspondent bank.
Crazy.
Yeah. We did this analysis of someone in Mexico trying to pay a vendor in Vietnam. And there's 3 to 5 middlemen. It could take 3 to 7 days. They might be paying as much as 10% of the fee, but worst yet, they wouldn't even know what the fee was until after they sent the transaction. Just sort of crazy UX. And stablecoins are such a strong solution to this that even though all of the infrastructure and tooling hasn't been built yet, even though it's not done, people want this product that badly that they're already gravitating towards making international payments like that on stablecoin rails. And it's a lot of opportunity for us, and we're excited to keep making investments there.
How do you think the promise of stablecoins has been realized? I think you just made a really good case study for the issues that occur now. And obviously that we're very excited about the future of stablecoins. How much of that is a reality, in your opinion, versus hype, or this could be in the day? Like how much of that is actually being sort of knocked out? You mentioned twice Visa, so it seems like it's absolutely massive. But
yeah, I mean, so like just recently, there's a bunch of announcements from like Visa, MasterCard, Circle. I expect there's going to be many more to come where people are integrating with stablecoins because there's this demand. People really want this. I think your question is, are we beginning to see traction, and what do we expect to see next? And the answer is, yeah, we really are seeing a lot of traction. Last couple months, I think I saw 20 to 30 remittance companies, international payments companies, and remittances, and all of them were 1 million to 10 million TPV or more. And many of them were growing at more than 10% a month. Just a whole industry it's a rising tide, and it means there's enough opportunity for everyone. Now, what's going to happen next? We'll see. I mean, there's going to be both the improvements to payments that we're excited about, we've talked about mostly, but also there's going to be totally net new opportunities. So is that micropayments or streaming? Is it apps that historically didn't have payments because it was too hard to integrate or too expensive? but now it actually makes sense to add payments. We've got a portfolio company called Blackbird that's doing that. It's doing payments for restaurants. And the opportunity is just enormous. And yeah.
What do you think is the biggest misconception around stablecoins?
That's a good question. There's a couple of things that people might get wrong around the edges. I mean, first of all, the most common construction of stablecoins today is what I would call a Fiat-reserve stablecoin. I wrote a piece about stablecoins in the history of banking that looked at the common constructions of stablecoins, how they're literally made and how they, what's backing them and so forth. About 90% of stablecoins right now are fiat reserve. That's predominantly USDC and USDT. And then there's, of course, what I'd call CDPs, collateralized debt position stablecoins. Yeah, algorithmic has not really succeeded as an experiment. I think we had some famous blowups there, and I'm glad we've the market has responded by having mostly fiat reserve, so sort of a easier to understand model. There might still be room for experimentation in algorithmic stablecoins, but we haven't seen it as popular. But the CDPs are like Maker, or it's now called Sky. These have been actually very robust. So that's one thing. Like, there's different types of them, and many of them can work. Yeah, that comes to mind quickly. Nothing else immediately jumps in about misconceptions.
Why do you think now is the time that we're seeing so much mainstream adoption for stablecoins? Like, why now?
Yeah, we saw it about 18 months ago. 18 months ago, we realized that it was going to cost less than 1 cent and take less than 1 second to send a payment anywhere in the world. And I was looking around.
That's brilliant. That's a great way to put that.
Yeah, we was looking at my team saying, like, guys, like we did it. Like, like the payments are going to work on crypto rails now. Now, of course, it takes a little while for people to take advantage of that infrastructure. Usually, I don't like to say if you build it, they will come. But it turns out here, it took a minute for people to take advantage of this capability. And right after it became that cheap and that fast, people started building the remittances companies that I was talking about. People like Visa start integrating it into their experience. We're just seeing the knock-on effects of that technical change. And yeah, it's going to get faster, going to get cheaper and more integrated. So we'll see even more.
As we move into a more virtual world, an online world, as people would argue, it's interesting because we look outside here and today, and this event is packed. People flew in from all over the country. Why do you think these in-person events continue to be so essential, if you do believe that, to the industry and for the growth of the stable industry?
I hadn't thought about that in the context of stablecoins, admittedly, but I love an in-person event. I think for a lot of people, they ask a question like, how do stablecoins work? And I'd be happy to explain the answer to that question. We could talk about where the money sits and how you spend it and how you transfer from wallet to wallet. But really, when someone asks, how does a stablecoin work? What they mean is, show me when I'd use it and make me feel comfortable and safe doing it. And sometimes that kind of lesson just happens better in person. You meet someone face to face, they pull up a wallet, they send you $20. They, you do these things that make you realize this is a technology like so many I've used, one I can really wrap my mind around and one I can get a lot of utility out of.
It's real money.
It's real. Yeah, it's just that kind of lesson happens better in person. I was playing basketball the other day and I rent out a gym. So $20 for a gym costs, whatever, $400. People had to Venmo me at the end. And one guy knew I'm really into stablecoins. And so he comes up to me and he says, can I send you $20, directly to your ENS? So it's sambroner.eth. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. So he sends me $20. It costs him a small fraction of a cent. I immediately put that $20 into a lending protocol. And this was on Saturday, by Monday morning, I had already earned back whatever the fee was that had taken. So, and people are sort of watching me do that interaction. Those kinds of experiences just make it easier for people to wrap their head around why they might want to use stables.
Do you think we're moving towards a world where retail adopts stables? Like retail or mom and pop shops? Because that's kind of was the promise of Bitcoin and crypto at the beginning.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a lot of barriers to that happening. Do you think stables could be that bridge?
First of all, I think the answer is yes. I've written about this sort of extensively in a piece called Stablecoins Are Eating Payments. Adoption will probably happen differently in different segments. So in the US, it might be PSP-led, payment service provider-led, just because they get such a large expansion of their margin by switching to stablecoin rails. Whereas in other countries, it might be led by just a structural demand for dollars. You live in a high inflation country, you might just want to hold dollars. And then for international businesses, it might be driven by sort of that that corresponding banking system when I was talking about the Mexico to Vietnam payment. But ultimately, when we look at mom and pop shops, some of them are paying 2%, 3% in card fees. And if you're a corner store, grocery store, that's equivalent to your overall profitability.
Oh yeah.
So if you get rid of that fee, you're talking about doubling your profitability. You can use that to either, buy better produce, pay your employees more, offer discounts to your customers, and obviously they're going to want that. And so I'm really excited to see that vision be realized too.
I completely agree. Just like kind of as a closing note, what have been your thoughts on this event so far? Overall impressions, and do you think would you like to see this expand too? Because we've heard a lot of interest in this kind of just continuing to expand and become decentralized, the stable sort of meetup model.
Yeah, sounds great. I love being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the great interview. Definitely check out some of the articles mentioned here. I read one of them myself, super insightful. I can tell we have got an expert on our hands. So I would highly encourage everyone who's watching this to go check out Sam's work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.